So apparently Kamala Harris is all for the reparations. So let's kind of break that down. Hey everyone, this is Tom with Tom's Talk Show. And if you could do me the favor of like, sharing, and subscribing these videos, I would much appreciate it. Then you can be sure to catch up with me when I create new videos as we go, especially this election season as we head forward in the next 40 or 50 days before this, we all get to run out and vote. Here in Florida, it's very efficient. Thanks to the 90s or whatever, the hanging Chad issue. Well, it's very straightforward here in Florida. Makes it real easy to do. So here we go. In her statements, Vice President Kamala Harris has expressed support for reparations as her presidential campaign kicks off in earnest. Okay, so how's that exactly going to be done? I mean, that's right. I mean, so first, I think we would need to, number one, find out who is a direct descendant of a slave. We should not give reparations to someone who did not come from this slave, people that were brought over. Number two is who is a direct descendant of a slave holder. I do not think that the entire United States en masse should be doing reparations. It should be direct descendants of people who actually were the slave holders. Those were basically the perpetrators of it. So we need to then, on the other side, those people, right, should have their money go to the people who were descendants of slaves, right? My family did not. My family came over on the Mayflower, part of the white line of, last name was white, line of people. They were trying to flee, from religious kind of persecution because they wanted to worship how they, felt was right, and so they left and came over here. The other side of my family came over, I think, later after that, and came through Ellis Island. They changed the last name lettering so that they would separate themselves from what was over there because they were becoming Americans and becoming part of American society, right? So my family has none. Okay, so do we have DNA and documentation of all slaves and slaveholders? We would need that and exact, for sure, hard evidence of who, what, where, when, and why, and all that. I mean, sure. So, okay, I would say this is another thing. What slaves were working in harsh circumstances, right? Some people, and here we go. Some people who were slaves were not from Africa. I think there were Dutch slaves and other different areas of the globe that came over. Many of them were like indentured servants who worked off their debt and they were let go. Many of these. Who of those, right? I mean, if you realized that where you were was not any good, and you thought, I'm going to try this, and you actually went yourself and kind of brought yourself over, then how is that? I mean, granted, that's a very small number, but do they get excluded? Do they still get included? If you were an indentured servant and just, worked 2 years and worked off your debt and then were let go, is that part of this whole thing? I mean, there's a lot of questions in this whole thing. Okay. So, here we go. If someone, after the slaves were free, after the emancipation were freed, they married a non-slave, do their descendants only get half? Because you got one person who was not a slave and one person who was a slave. Then, their children were only going to, they only have like half of the, limitations from slavery, right? Because one of them was, questions. I'm asking questions. Okay. Number 6, should slave descendants who currently live better lives than the current residents of Congo need or get reparations? Just asking very simple questions. Okay, so during that time, there were about 388,000 people brought to the United States. There were, here it says there, this is from the History Channel. So there 1.2 million were taken to Jamaica, and Brazil had 4.8 million slaves taken there. So we had a very small number. I tried to find a number that, like, what's what would be similar to that, today? It's like, well, I live near Tampa, Florida. Right now, Tampa, Florida has 400,000 people living there. So compare that to the entire state, compare that to the entire nation. That's, you know, minuscule percentages, right? So these people, most of them came from this Congo area in Africa, yeah, so that's where they were coming from. So here we go. Here's some interesting facts about from Wikipedia. So take it for what it is. So let's see. The DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, has the world's second highest rate of infant mortality in April 2011. Though the Global Alliance for Vaccines, new vaccines prevent some pneumococcal disease was introduced. And so in 2012, it was estimated that 1.1% of adults aged 15 to 49 were living with HIV/AIDS. Malaria and yellow fever are problems. May 2019 death toll from Ebola surpassed 1,000. So that's a fun thing to have to deal with, Ebola. Okay, let's see. According to World Bank Group, 2016, 26,000 people died due to traffic accidents. So let's see. Maternal health is very poor. 2010 estimates it has the 17th highest maternal mortality rate in the world. According to UNICEF, 43.5% of children under 5 are stunted. So that means their growth, their health is so bad that they don't grow like they should. Air pollution levels in the DRC are rated very unhealthy. 2020, the average air pollution was this 34.2, which is 6.8 times the World Health Organization's guideline of 5. So pollution levels are estimated to reduce life expectancy the average citizen by 3 years. And they have no health standard for air. So that's pretty good living conditions. Maybe you should move back, right? If you don't like it here. Yes, I don't know. So no, don't, stay here. It's fine. So here we go. This is the World Bank Group. Some more interesting information. The DRC is among the 5 poorest nations in the world. Estimated 75% of Congolese people live on less than $2.15 a day. 1 out of 6 people is living in extreme poverty. Extreme poverty. Okay. So basically, what that means, right? Okay. So now, today, so let's look at life expectancy. Okay. Life expectancy from birth in the Congo. Okay. So in Congo, when slaves were being taken out in the 1870s, back then, average life expectancy was 30 years old, which was not very far. I mean, so not until 1995 do they actually hit 50 years old. Now, comparison in the United States in 1900 hit 50 years old, and right now we're floating next to 80. Congo right now is just ticked to 60. That's dropped a little bit. I think another chart that I saw because of COVID, because they have very poor health systems and poor, they don't have the ability to get water and clean and shower every day and all of that. Although they probably do have fairly readily access to things like ivermectin. Yeah, but so, and the other thing that I really would have to emphasize is right now, contemporary slavery, there are an estimated 38 to 49, almost 50 million people in some kind of slavery, whether that's governmental slavery, sex slavery, child slavery, anything. Oh, and that's one fun thing, right? All you people that drive electric vehicles. Oh, yeah. That's all your little kids there in Congo digging for all the minerals to make the batteries and stuff in your electric car. It's really green. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So these are my questions, right? How do we determine, what or if, overall, of course, slavery in every form, in every way, is bad. I mean, but we're all slaves to our credit cards. We're all slaves, to basically to the government, to our jobs, to our bills. We're all slaves to something, but we have, kind of choice to be in those things, right? We don't want to move somewhere that's less expensive. You can stay somewhere that's more expensive. We have, some ability to make, changes in how our budget and finances are. Slavery for these 50 million people in the world, they don't have that, right? So I guess my point in all of this is, number one, slavery is horrible. Slavery is bad. These 50 million people, we need to do whatever we can peaceably to get them help get all these people out of slavery, not bring them to the United States, but change the government where they are, so that doesn't happen. Okay, so there's that. But what you're seeing, this trade-off here is like, okay, if your family, right, your family was brought over to the United States, one of these almost 400 million people, or 400,000 people, was one of those that got brought over. I would say today, you are living an infinitely better life than if your family would have stayed in Congo. You probably would not be even alive if you were still in Congo. I mean, back then, life expectancies, were 30, 35, 40. Disease rampant, air pollution, reducing lifespan. Not you and your family could be, kind of semi-forced into its own slavery there today to, mine all the minerals for these people who think electric cars are so great. Right? I mean, where really do you need reparations, right? If that's your reasoning, is because you're a descendant of slaves and you're a step behind. Well, after emancipation, 1 or 2 generations, that's the whole. People came here to the United States. The Pilgrims, right, came to the United States with everything that only what they could fit on one boat. That's it, right? Not a lot. And many of them didn't make it. I think it was Walter White, I think was his name. He was one of the people. He had a printing press over in England or Britain, there, wherever they were, because they went from there to Denmark or something like that before they came across. But he ran the printing press so that he could print out the flyers to come over. And then once they got here, he was the first one to die. So he was only here for like a month and he got sick and died. And then his wife at the time had the first child in the United States. But they had literally nothing when they got here. Once they got here, they had to forage and fight and do whatever they needed to do, to survive. That's so many people that come to the United States, legally. That's people moving their families here so that they can, they start with nothing. They're a janitor. They work at, as a cook in a restaurant. They do all, whatever they can do to make it so that their children can have a better life. And after slavery was ended, then those people, those children now were there at that time. Of course, there were up until, the 60s when equal rights were put in place. And that's kind of where you can actually vote and move things in your direction. But as far as freedom, able to do things, able to work, able to have your family, right? Today you are, even in the 60s, under, before emancipation, right? You were still infinitely better off than the life in Congo and the other African countries that you came from. that your family, that your heritage came from, right? So I mean, it's a different, and like I said, what about people who came from other places that were slaves? It's almost impossible to figure out, and it just seems to me to be like a pandering thing. I mean, wherever my family came from, or whatever their harshness, their things that they went through. I mean, my parents, one side of my family, uh, came and worked had orange groves in Los Angeles, and then gave it all up to move to North Dakota, uh, just to be able to work in fields there. The other side of my family was working in fields in Oklahoma. And the Dust Bowl came through, and they took every last bit of what they had that they could pile on 2 cars, stacked on top with ropes and everything else, and drove to California. And the only reason that they were able to really survive was because there was one job open at the railway yard, and 500 people showed up, and the people hiring looked around and said, "You're the biggest, you get the job." And that just happened to be my grandfather. So, I mean, all of these circumstances that get you to where you are now, I think in a way you should, like I said, not that slavery is a good thing at all. It is not. But maybe not celebrate is not a really good word, but maybe honor what your ancestors went through by saying, kind of, thank you for doing what you did and being there and fighting the fight and, helping wherever you could, right? And the North, being there, like my family was from the North. On that one side of my family was from the North, and they were definitely against slavery, right? So why should I have to pay right anything for reparations for anyone, right? But honor what they did, honor what they fought for, and to ask for some kind of small money, grab from the government so that the government can buy your vote, so that when they come around for the next election, they can just say, we gave you all this money, you have to vote for us, even though your grocery bill has tripled and your car insurance has doubled and your taxes are through the roof, right? So you got to think about the whole picture of everything, right? I mean, if you're in the Congo now, your life is horrible. Your life is definitely not what it is in the United States, even if you live in a fairly poor area in the United States, right? But at least here in the U.S., you will definitely have an ability and a way to fight and do something so that your kids can have a better life, right? Okay. Well, thanks so much for watching. Do you think I'm way off base? Do you think I have no idea what I'm talking about? It's a very complicated subject, but I just don't think it's necessary. I think too many people, like the whole student loan, trying to forgive all the student loans, then we're going to give, California's giving people $150,000 for a house, and then the government wants to build their own houses so they can put you in them. Oh, but if you don't vote the right way, you're going to get evicted, right? Or they're going to bring in, like, up in the city in Ohio, right? They're going to bring in other migrants and kick you out of those houses and send you on the street. So you have to really pay attention to who you're voting for and what's going on. And money giveaways always increase inflation. I think we can all do with a lot less government in our lives at this point, and a lot less politics. I hate that it's always fight this and fight that, and how do we keep this from happening, and everything else. It's whack-a-mole, trying to keep it all knocked down. All right. Well, thanks for watching, and take care.